Is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank my colleague for yielding. And Madam Chair, I rise in strong opposition to H.R. 2021, the so-called Jobs and Energy Permitting Act. I oppose this legislation for several reasons. First, it gives oil companies a pass to pollute. It exempts offshore drilling companies from applying pollution control technologies to vessels like crew and supply boats, which actually account for most of the air pollution from drilling off my congressional district's coast. It also opens up a loophole for drill ships to pollute with no limits while the ship moves into place. And instead of measuring pollution at the source itself, H.R. 2021 allows oil companies to measure the impacts at the shore, with net results of more air pollution overall. Second, H.R. 2021 does away with proven processes that provide an expert, efficient, and impartial review of air permitting decision. I would note that in 20 years, the Santa Barbara Air Pollution Control District has never denied an offshore drilling permit, and there is more drilling off my district than just about anywhere in this country. The local air permitting review process works. We don't need to change it. In addition, this bill's provision to remove all appellate action to Washington, D.C. is wholly unfair. This limits the rights of my constituents to participate in very important matters affecting their health. It forces cash-strapped local governments to travel thousands of miles to defend their permitting decisions, placing a serious burden on local taxpayers. And finally, and perhaps most importantly to my constituents, H.R. 2021 poses real health risks to the communities surrounding local air quality standards. Pollution from nearly 24 oil platforms and the vessels that supply them in the Santa Barbara Channel includes high levels of airborne pollutants. These pollutants can cause severe lung problems and other major health issues. And that's why our state adopted rules to strengthen air quality standards and help protect coastal residents from this pollution. It makes no sense to block these rules that will help my community clean up its air. In sum, Madam Chair, H.R. 2021 is a bad bill. But let me also address a theme that's been repeated on the other side. Supporters of this bill continue to parrot the Shell Oil talking point that it has taken them 5 years to get a Clean Air Act permit for their proposed drilling in the Arctic Ocean. They cite this 5-year delay as justification for this legislation. This claim might make a nice soundbite, but it's based on a fundamental misunderstanding of the facts. And here are the facts. First, Shell has pulled its permit applications, modified its proposed operations, changed its target drilling sites on numerous occasions over the past few years. Shell pulled the permit application for drilling in the Beaufort Sea for 2 years until going back to EPA with a brand new request in 2010. Every time Shell changed its plans, EPA had to adjust its assessment of the potential impacts on air quality and public health, and that's what we expect EPA to do. No one wants EPA to take a one-size-fits-all approach to the permitting of these major sources of pollution. Second, Shell delayed final EPA on its air permit for drilling in the Chukchi Sea by submitting insufficient permit applications. That's Shell fault, not EPA's. And finally, EPA has prioritized Shell's permit applications and finalized them quickly. The 2 Shell permits at issue were proposed and finalized within 3 to 4 months of receiving completed applications. Both went from submission of a completed application to a decision by the Environmental Appeals Board within 1 year. EPA now says it's on track to finalize Shell's revised permits by the end of this summer. If this bill is about addressing Shell's so-called 5-year permitting delay, then I see no basis for this legislation. The truth is that this bill isn't about expediting the permit process. It's about rolling back air quality protections. This bill will create more problems than it purports to solve because it will allow oil companies to pollute more offshore and cut the concern that stakeholders have out of the very process itself. And I urge my colleagues to oppose this bill.
Gentlewoman.